overview. It was written in 1983, I believe, of modern housing estates and their relationship to crime. So she studied an enormous amount of housing estates throughout London, and she put forward in her book, which is interesting in a way, she puts it forward as she takes it to court. She literally says, I am the prosecutor and I want modern architecture convicted for its direct role in crime. So the whole book that she made is also set up with like case for the prosecution, case for the defense, cross-examination, examination of the evidence. The chapters of the book are based on the phases in a criminal trial. And the main crime by modernist architecture and planning is the elevated walkway. She says the elevated walkway is the biggest single criminal deed by modernist architects. Because, and then she sums it up, the elevated walkway. She also has statistics that shows the relationship of for example, the amount of addresses on one stairwell, or the amount of addresses served by one elevated walkway, or the amount of stairs from the ground floor to the elevated walkway. And all these things she sums up, and then she takes crime numbers and puts them next to them. The amount of burglaries, amount of muggings, amount of robberies, amount of stolen cars, amount of burned cars, even amounts of domestic violence. And then she finds a correlation. She finds a correlation, a statistical correlation between the elevated walkways, the amount of housing stacked on top of each other, and the amount of crime. And thereby she proves that one has led to another. She proves that modernist design does not only make crime possible, but that it makes people more criminal. It's what you could call voodoo statistics. So these are some elements from her book in which she shows elevated walkways and what they lead to, graffiti, which means crime, etc. This also leads to a big wave in Britain of two things. A kind of, you could say, architectural criminology. This, for example, is a study by Barry Poyner, somebody from, you could say, from the school of Alice Coleman, who has studied the effects of taking away the elevated walkways. All through England, housing estates were being Colemanized, was the term. Alice Coleman engendered this whole wave of a type of urban restructuring called Colemanization, which meant making more doorbells, more doors, and taking down all the elevated walkways, and creating new, and to more or less make every building into its own unit with one door, with just one entrance, and also a gate around it. So every and these are, for example, maps by the studies of Barry Poyner of the locations of robberies in the 6 months before the demolition of the walkways and the 6 months after the demolition of the walkways. So here you can see, for example, the walkways are removed and crime goes down dramatically. And so this idea of robberies and snatches go down dramatically. But also thefts from cars go down dramatically. But you can also see they go up again too. So this is what happened in the whole of Britain. In the whole of Britain, before and after, but especially after Broadwater Farm, elevated walkways were being demolished, and the buildings were all turned into more or less autonomous units that you could only reach and leave in one direction. Here you can see the current state of Broadwater Farm. Now, the interesting thing, and that I'll leave you with that, it's a bit of an inconclusive ending, but I can't help it. The Broadwater Farm, after the riots and after being coalmanized, became the most peaceful place in London ever. Literally. In the 20 years after the riots, there was such a massive investment of concierges, of security guards, of an extremely precise way of determining who would live in that area and who not. A constant monitoring by social workers, police, etc., that the amount of robberies went from, I think, 500 every month to 0 every month. So this area became one of the most safe, but also most controlled environments in London. It was also given endless budgets to create huge identity projects, like enormous murals painted by local West Indian artists, etc. This is this artist who's been living, who's made a really good living out of these this waterfall of subsidies. So this is the area. So the interesting thing is, and thereby you can see how the British system would react very differently to a situation like this than the American system, whereby of course the scale is also much smaller, whereby the British system says they throw in all the powers of public governance and public subsidizing and public control they have in order to control this piece of city, because it has become such a symbol of the powerlessness of government. So this place where government was in absolute crisis, where they could not even protect their own police officers, they had to, where the black youths held this place as if it was their own castle, they turned it around into a public relations symbol of the power of government to shape society. But something that is happening right now makes it a little bit more, you could say, worrying, a little bit more strange, because two things have happened, or a couple of things have happened in a very short while after each other. A couple of weeks ago, if you would Google Broadwater Farm, you would find all these articles about the miraculous resurrection of Broadwater Farm as a place that has gone from being the worst to the best, or from the most dangerous to the safest piece of London. If you Google it, but then a couple of weeks ago, a number of things happened after each other. The first was that somehow, for some reason, the investigation into the death of Keith Blakelock has been reopened. Because these first few guys that they locked up, they had to let go again after 5 years, because that trial was a complete show trial. But so the people who killed PC Blakelock have still not been punished. And now there has been new evidence or new questions that this is not a good thing, that this cannot be accepted. So there have been new arrest warrants. Some boys who are now in their early 40s, so then they were like 15, 16, have now been arrested. Crime Watch, which is the Peter R. de Vries, I guess, for you Dutch people, of the BBC, has created together with the British police, an entire recreation of the events of the riots of Broadwater Farm in order to this time really bring the criminals to justice. You have to imagine, after 25 years, and they probably were teenagers. It is for that reason that an entire, very precise model of the area has been recreated by the police and the BBC as a centerpiece of this, this recreation. Here you can see a policeman pointing out exactly the point where there were riots, and as you can see, these riots happened between the elevated walkways of Broadwater Farm on the left and the Victorian houses on the right. So this is exactly where these battles between the police and the Broadwater Farm youths were being held. So here's the model. And then there's a real recreation. They rebuilt elements one-to-one of the Broadwater in BBC studios. You can see there the elevated walkways being recreated. People being brought in to play the police, camera crews, cars being set on fire. So the entire event is being recreated in order to find out what exactly happened. And then, and of course, I mean, I am constantly extremely critical about connecting dots between things that, just because they happen after each other, do not mean that they have caused it to happen. But still, it is interesting that after more than 20 years of literally no crime, not even a burglary, in Broadwater Farm, they start recreating the riots. They start raking up this whole story again. They start arresting people from Broadwater Farm who are suspected of having killed the policeman 25 years ago. And what happens? In 1 week, a big arrest of a drug dealer and a teenager shot to death in the housing estate. So we don't know how this will end, but you can see. But what it does suggest is the kind of extreme sensitivity of areas like these to things that happen in their environment. Not just the value, but also the obsession nearly with their architectural form, and the idea that that crime, well, the fear, the story that I take away most from this story is this fear of anything happening at all, and how this fear can also lead to a type of police oppression that can really create violence. So it's a kind of a story of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I leave you to think about that for the coming week. Thank you.